March 5th, 2007, I boarded a Greyhound bus from Norfolk to New York. I was going to Harlem to meet Twin, who is Joel Santana's brother. Twin had set up a meeting for him and Dipset to hear my beats. On the way to New York, the bus stops in Maryland. A woman and her son board the bus. They sit directly behind me. Sometime after we depart from Maryland, this woman speaks to me in order to converse and pass time. While we were talking, I used profanity and she rebuked me kindly. She said Jesus didn't want me to speak like that. From that point on, she was trying to save me, but I wasn't trying to hear it though, because I had been there and done that, and I felt differently about it. But out of respect, I listened to her anyway, all the way to Manhattan. Once we got to the New York Port Authority, she gave me her number and told me to call her because I needed Jesus. So I took her number out of respect, but I had no intentions of calling her because my mind was on money, not God. So when I got to Harlem, I called Twin. He said they couldn't meet me that day, but we could meet tomorrow instead. So the next day, I called Twin again and he doesn't answer. I text Twin and he doesn't reply. I go to Santana's Town, which was a store owned by Joel Santana in Harlem on Amsterdam Ave, to find Twin, and he's not there. I asked the woman who worked there, had she heard or seen him today, and she said that she hadn't seen or heard from them all day. So I leave. So all morning and afternoon, I'm checking my phone to see if I missed Twin's call or text. But it was that evening when I realized who I should have been calling and texting. So I said, okay, God. So I called the woman I met on the bus, and the first thing she says is, about time you called me. She invites me to her home that same evening. She gives me her address, and I go. I board the 2 train from Harlem to the Bronx. I get off the train and I walk from there. She stayed in the project towers near the train station. At first, I was suspicious because I thought this could be a setup. But the moment I went into her apartment, I knew she was devoted to Jesus. In the hallway, after you enter the front door, were a row of bags filled with personal items. She apologized and said, "Don't mind those. They belong to the homeless." And that she was keeping the bags inside her apartment so they could go to a job fair that day without bringing the bags along or having to fear someone taking their bags. After that, she had me watching the Word Network, reading the Bible, and showing me crafts her son made for God. Before I left her apartment that night, she prayed for me. So I get back to the Harlem YMCA that night and I fall asleep trying to process what is happening. I wake up the next morning and I check my phone, and Twin still hasn't called or texted me back. And I said, "Okay, God, I'm yours. You don't have to do nothing else to me, and you don't have to do nothing to my son." At that time, I had one child out of wedlock. Inside my room in the Harlem YMCA, overlooking the streets of Harlem, I told God, "You got me. I'm yours." I called the woman from the Bronx and I told her that I chose to accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And she said, "Congratulations. We have to celebrate." So we meet up that same day, me, her, and her son. And we catch the train to Zoe's Christian bookstore in Manhattan. And I spent over $100 on two Bibles. I had never bought a Bible in my life. I bought a Zondervan NIV Life Application Study Bible, and I bought a Franklin Electronic NIV Bible. That night we went to Times Square and we celebrated what God had set up and the decision I had made. I let her choose the restaurant and I paid. I can't remember the name of it, but I remember it was very upscale and it was upstairs overlooking the streets of Times Square. We ate, drank, and laughed. Just me, her, and her son. That night was the last night I would see them. The next morning, I was ready to go home. I still had a couple of hours before my departure though. I felt like what was supposed to happen had happened, and it was no reason to be here any longer, I went downtown to the Port Authority bus terminal and I asked the bus driver that was departing a few hours before 8 a.m. if I could ride back to Norfolk early. He checked to see if he had room for me, and then he let me board. This was significant because I never heard back from Twin or Dipset. So this was my fork in the road moment. And I know that had I went left, I would have been left behind.